Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a quick review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Thorburn L28. First off, I want to thank my buddy Mike. Mike is a friend of the channel and is often set gear. This time, this knife arrived with this little note. L28, the best EDC. I really love this thing. Show me the ugly. We have a gear masochist indeed. Well, thank you, Mike, and alas, I'm going to do that for you here. Before we go too much further, though, let's do a size comparison. Right here, of course, is your Thorburn L28. Let's drop the ZTO 452CF. Right here is your Spyderco Delica, as per tradition. Right here, we've got ourselves Ontario Rat number 1 in D2 steel, and let's throw in a Rat number 2. Perfect. Let's see here. Benchmade 940, which is, you can see we're right around the same blade length area. ZTO 450 CF. And finally, a knife that I think that there are reasonable comparisons here, the Grimsmo Rask. Very, very nice knife as well. So there we go. That's the size comparison. This is a custom knife, it's worth stating, by Andre Thorburn. And Andre Thorburn is one of the best-known knife designers coming out of South Africa. Really well-known and, frankly, very, very skilled man. So there you go. The last thing I want to say is that this is a quick review. Because this is a custom knife, and it's weird to review custom knives like, you can't get one, haha. And also, this particular knife shows some signs of damage that we'll talk about a little bit later on, and so I don't really know whether this is factory condition, etc. So I'm going to give my overall impressions, but this isn't going to be the full good, great, bad, and the ugly. So anyways, let's go on ahead and jump into some of the good and some of the bad here. Okay, so on the good side, I do love the size of this knife very much. It's sort of in that nice intermediate range between something that is too small to be useful and too large to be, well, reasonable. This has enough blade to do pretty much anything you need, but it's still reasonably compact, and part of that is just the overall design. I mean, you can see here that when this is folded up, there's not a lot to it. It's small, it hangs off to the side nicely, you've got smooth areas. This is very, well, it's not very hard to carry. And it's also nicely done in terms of its overall thickness. Thorburn has a tendency to make some very thick knives. This is just thick enough for ergonomics, but it's not terrible in the pocket. So that's something that's good, and I appreciate it very much. Another thing I appreciate in terms of carry is the weight. It's not a particularly heavy knife. Coming in at 2.85 ounces, that's just A-okay for me. So there you go. Next thing I'll say is that the design of this guy is kind of nice. You've got yourself a bit of inlaid G10 here. You've got yourself full liners, and you've got a blade that's kind of an interesting little shape here. Very much a fan of that, so that's good. The clip on this guy is yet another good thing. What you can see here is that he's kind of pressed a ball bearing into the clip here itself, and what this means is that when you go to put this into your pocket, there's a very smooth ramp to get this guy into and out of your pocket. Absolutely spectacular. It's easy to use, and the clip is also very high. One thing I will say is that Thorburn Customs often have a clip that is not so great, with relatively little ramp and area. This is a great clip, so I love that very, very much. Next thing I gotta highlight is the details on this guy. You can see that if you look closely, there's a bunch of little details going on here, ranging from the punch through on the flipper tab, which seems to be a very Thorburn thing to do. The jimping here is just excellently done. I mean, I'll try and zoom in, but you can just see it's beautifully geometrically milled, like that very much. The G10 inlays here is very nice. The pivot screw is unique and very nice as well. It is just a Torx, by the way. You've got the Thorburn blue liners. It just seems to be the case that everything he makes is in this shade, and it's a very nice shade of blue. The grind on it is great in a lot of ways, too. You get this very nice curvy sort of grind. It's a very flowing grind rather than anything too harsh or geometrical, so I appreciate that very much. And, of course, the maker's mark, as is always the case with Thorburn, is just very nicely done here. It's very readable. It's very clean and crisp and under control, I suppose. So that's good. I mean, the fit and finish overall on this knife is very, very nice. I'm definitely a fan of the knife in that way. Then the final thing on the good side that really should blow you away with pretty much any Thorburn is the action. One of the things Thorburn is known for is making these incredibly sweet IKBS-based actions, and this is no different. This is a ceramic IKBS knife, and, the action is great on both sides. On the deploy, fires 100% reliably with a nice click to it. It's a beautiful action, 100%. And so that's spectacular. And then on the closing side, it is also a very smooth knife. It's IKBS, so it's not the same sort of drop shot smooth that you get on the captive bearing sort of Norseman knives, the Rask in this case, but it is absolutely a very smooth closure, and it's a joy to use. So the action on this knife is a real pleasure, and it is kind of an action showpiece in the way that Thorburn is so capable of doing. So I love the action on this very much, and so for me, all of that is kind of the stuff I really enjoyed about this knife. The action is spectacular, as it is on pretty much anything Thorburn touches. It's got nice details, good fit and finish, a great clip with this ball bearing thing, very nice. A nice design to it overall, and the size is just great for an EDC knife. Let's talk about what I didn't like so much. On the side of the stuff I don't like so much, first off, it is an IKBS knife, and as you saw in the disassembly, that does complicate things a little bit. Personally, I don't mind it that much, but I'm used to it, and so that makes it easier. But if you're the kind of guy who likes to take apart your knives, and particularly if you do it in inclement conditions, this is not a great choice for that. So there you go, keep that in mind. Next thing, this blade has a very slight recurve to it. It's the kind of recurve that is not quite enough recurve to be meaningful, really aesthetically important, but is just enough to mess up if you're using sharp, flat stones or something like that. So generally, I'd like either a little bit more recurve or none at all in this case. Not a big deal, though. Next thing, as I highlighted during the disassembly, the clip screw is a little bit long, and that leads to a gap right here between the G10 and the liner. Not a big deal, but it is something that's a little bit ugly, although, again, this knife has been around a little bit, way before it got to my buddy Mike, and it's possible that somebody over-screwed, over-tightened this or something along those lines. I don't know. I can't vouch for it, but still, that's not great. That's part of the reason this is quick rather than full review. Speaking of which, the stop pin on this guy, unfortunately, I think has been bent slightly. Somebody must have really used a ton of wrist to really slam down into something and bent that pin. And that allows now, with that stop pin kind of pinned in that position, it allows a little bit of rattle where the blade is able to move around on the detent ball, and the blade actually does contact the inside of the backspacer, which is G10, as it lands. I'm going to see if I can use a little light here to show you that, but you'll see right there, that little white line, and then there is another little line in there. Show those two regions where the blade hits the bottom of the backspacer. This is G10, so it's not going to dull the knife nearly as much as a metal liner would, or a metal backspacer would, but still, that's one of those things that's really ugly and needs to not be the case. Again, I'm assuming that this is a damaged knife, and in fact, I've talked with other friends of mine who have this exact knife and confirmed that that's not a thing. But what that probably does mean is that there is a weakness in this stop pin, that the stop pin isn't quite beefy enough to do the trick. It doesn't surprise me, given the size of it, that it's not a terribly robust thing, but it is a failure mode you're going to worry about. Next thing on this guy is that this is a custom knife. And that just means that it's going to be very hard to find one of these. For instance, this is the only one I've seen in this sort of G10 configuration, and they're also going to be very expensive. I'm seeing these guys, the ones that are available, anywhere from, $800 to $1,000, $1,200. Those are usually in like the Damas steel and, fancy engraving and whatnot. But still, so you're not going to just be able to go down to your local store or even contact an online retailer and pick one of these up necessarily. And then finally, on the bad side, and the thing that would be really ugly to me if I was doing the full review, is these little tiny screws here. These are ridiculously small. I believe these were T5 screws. T5, and that's honestly way too small. They have a possibility to strip out very effectively. I get why they're doing it aesthetically, but oh boy, does that kill me a little bit. And the thing is, these kinds of one-off custom knives have less justification than usual for using weird or hard-to-maintain hardware. I mean, if anybody used a permanent thread locker on these, it would be case closed. You're never getting this knife back apart. Because if you've got just one guy who can service this knife, namely Andre Thorburn, that's pretty difficult. I mean, I don't know. So I don't like this hardware whatsoever. I mean, the pivot's fine, but these little tiny screws leave me absolutely cold, and they make me very scared for the future of the knife because I know there's only one guy who can fix it, and he's an 18-hour plane ride away. So, yeah, there you go. So for me, at least, those are the things I don't like so much here. The tiny little screws are terrible, especially on a one-off sort of custom knife. It is a custom knife, which means it's hard to find and pretty expensive. The stop pin was bent due to prior damage, but that probably represents a weakness in that pin. The clip screw is a little bit too long here. Maybe that was prior damage. I don't love the recurve, and the IKBS system can be a little bit tricky to maintain. So let's talk about a final conclusion on this little guy. As I said, I don't feel quite right offering a final conclusion on a knife that has seen some better days. But the thing is, even in this condition, this is a really compelling and really great little knife. It's got a lot of things going for it that are really good. The size of it is great. The action, well, it's a Thorburn, so it's going to be a great freaking action. And the design on it is pretty great for everyday carry. I look at this as sort of being the South African answer to the Shirogorov Neon or the Grimsmo Rask. This little guy right here, in that this is a small-ish knife that is an incredible action showpiece and is a good everyday carry knife. I mean, Thorburn, I've showed off a Thorburn custom on the channel before, and it was a little bit weird. It was a little too thick, but this is a Thorburn that is actually EDC-able and really pretty damn nice. Unfortunately, like I said, though, this is a custom, and it's made by one prominent maker in South Africa. And so if you buy one, you've got the benefit of knowing that you've got a one-of-a-kind piece, but it also means that you're going to struggle to find one, struggle to afford it if you find one, and if there's a problem, you're probably going to struggle to get it fixed or replaced, because at the very, very least, you're shipping it back to South Africa. That's not to say that you shouldn't get one. That's not to say that this is a problematic knife, but as I've always said, custom knives are a bit of a double-edged sword. You gain some, but you also lose some, so you got to keep that in mind. For me personally, the price, the screws, and the stop pin weakness issue here is enough to stop me from hunting one of these down on my own. I'd like to think that the stop pin thing was just maybe an improperly hardened pin or something like that, but still, that's a little bit scary to me. The thing is, though, even if I'm not going to be hunting one of these down, it is still a very, very, very good little EDC knife. I'm not quite sure I'm ready to say the best EDC, as my buddy Mike says, but it is a damn good choice. And if one of these in perfect condition fell into my lap, I would absolutely end up carrying it, because it is a really nice little knife. So there you go. That's the Thorburn L28. I wish I could give it the full look, but at the very least, it is a nice knife, even where it is right now. And if you ever have a chance to check one of these guys out, I think you'd probably enjoy it. So there you go. Hope this was interesting, that I didn't Thorburn. Actually, I don't even know how to end that pun, but there's something about a burn there. Regardless. And that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Wow, that one didn't go so smooth. But that's okay. Unlike the knife, which was very smooth. Okay, I'm ending the video now. Bye now.